So socialism's basically an ideology that's based off of a lie. It's something so far removed from human nature and of course economic reality, and we've got a long history there that speaks for itself to show how disastrous socialism has been.
A ver, yo creo que el gran problema argentino es un problema cultural. Es decir, esta es una sociedad que está infectada de socialismo. Y lo que hay que lograr es sacar el socialismo de la cabeza de la gente, ¿sí? Y los principales promotores de estas ideas son los políticos. Te propongo que veas lo que fueron las declaraciones de Graciela Camaño. Se supone que uno de los mejores dirigentes de Argentina. ¿Sabes contra quién van? Contra los liberales, porque los liberales somos los únicos que le enrostramos a los políticos que ellos no son la solución, que ellos son el problema. Los políticos son una suerte de sociópatas que quieren hacernos creer que nosotros somos inválidos mentales, inválidos en todo sentido, porque no podemos vivir si no fuera por ellos. En realidad los que no pueden vivir sin nosotros son ellos. Es decir, si el país se separara entre los que producimos de un lado y del otro lado queda la mierda de los políticos, los sindicalistas, todo este conjunto de parásitos se hunden, se mueren. Separemos la Argentina, en Argentina del Norte y Argentina del Sur. ¿Sabes qué? Los que estamos dispuestos a laburar nos vamos a la parte más pobre del país, le dejamos vaca muerta, todo. Aun cuando se quedaran con todo, se van a hundir estas ratas porque no sirven para nada. En cambio, los que laburamos y sabemos ganarnos la vida, ¿sabes qué? Nos va a ir bien. Nosotros somos gente de bien, gente que labura y no vivimos abogando por la envidia, el odio, el resentimiento, el robo, sí, el trato desigual frente a la ley, que es esa inmundicia de la justicia social, que es lo más injusto que existe. Porque implica robarle a una persona el fruto de su trabajo para dárselo a quien a mí se me da la gana. Pero ¿de dónde salieron esta manga de sátrapa? ¿Sabes por qué? Porque además en todo ese proceso, no solo que destruyeron la economía, empobrecieron a la gente, sí, desde el año 70 hasta ahora el Estado se triplicó y multiplicaron por 6 el número de pobres, ¿sí? ¿Y sabes quiénes fueron los únicos que progresaron acá? Los políticos.
No just claiming the lives of countless millions of people, but of course causing extreme poverty. Wherever socialism has touched, it has been a catastrophic failure, and that includes even the Scandinavian countries that these people seem to keep on turning to as if they claim that they're socialist countries when in reality they're not. So two of the biggest lies that they're going to give you is the lie that socialism is workers' ownership of the means of production, or that socialism is somehow all about egalitarianism. And the one thing that you're always going to come across is that the socialist mentality only concentrates on what is basically theory. So with praxeology, it just happens to be that we as human beings are no chess pieces on a chessboard that you can just move around at free will. We've all got our own individual self-interest, and that is something that socialists try to reject. And you could go back to the days of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels when they tried to create the new man, and they were largely influenced off the back of Charles Darwin. Get humanity somehow back to the period of where apparently we were all apes and therefore we were all the same. And some of their arguments that are so dangerous, we were indoctrinated by our parents or something like that. We were indoctrinated by, the education system to be different from one another, as if to say that that was something not natural. They basically want to change mankind. Socialists like to look at humanity as if we're just people that you can just move about in a chessboard, completely controllable. And again, when you look at the word control is the antithesis of liberty, right? When you go back to what Karl Marx himself was saying, when he spoke about the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now, what exactly was Karl Marx meaning by that? Karl Marx was basically saying the remnants of capitalism would still exist. As they say, self-interest and human nature would still exist. He was acknowledging you still require the dictatorship of the proletariat, all mythical that it would somehow just wither away and that's it, is the very reason why in every one of these socialist regimes heading towards communism and that, it's always ended in totalitarianism. And that's the very reason why these socialists then turn around and say to you, oh, but it just doesn't been tried and tested in the right way yet, or that just wasn't true communism, because the fact that, oh well, it wasn't in the hands of the workers, and you get all this complete and utter silly nonsense. And any examples that they try to fling at you, whether it was the attempt of the Ukraine Free Territory or that of the Paris Commune, and any other examples that they fling at you about the so-called anarchy, you can guarantee that any example they fling at you, there's been dictatorships, such as the military dictatorship under Macron, or the mob rule that you saw in the Paris Commune, again similar to that of the anarchist Catalonia that was neo-anarchist. In fact, our, committees practically acted as their own form of government and were terrorising innocent people. Of course, they love to try and tell you a different version because they're ideologically driven. They don't like to hear that their precious religious ideology called socialism has been attacked. No chance has that existed on some mass scale country with millions and millions of people of, a vast economy with hundreds and thousands of different products across the economy. And again, I've done videos that explain on the economic calculation problem and the knowledge problem. It is impossible for them to deal, say for example, maybe Great Britain with a population of 65 million people. You've got such a large scale economy, a large scale population, it's impossible, and especially when they try to keep everybody on the same page. And even if you ask them the question, well, how are you going to get rid of the government? Well, how are you going to keep the private sector out of check? All of these things are not something that they can give you an answer to. For whatever reason being, they believe that folk can't do anything for themselves, or folk are too greedy. And how often have you heard that argument from socialists, that folk are just greedy, so they wouldn't do this, so we need to force it? A defining ethic of socialism is coercion. You can't have socialism without coercion. That is impossible. Everything about socialism is about force. It doesn't matter whether you talk about healthcare, education, fire service, all that stuff through public ownership. It has to be funded through that of force. And again, it goes back to that, psyche, the whole idea. They can't imagine a world where such things can be run privately and done by the people through a free market economy, whether you talk about education, healthcare, etc, etc. But the reason why I mention all this type of stuff is because I just happened to come across an individual that is just basically taking me by storm, and he's just...
Turismo y deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera, aunque te resistas. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, Adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera. Se acabó el curro de la política. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
And what can I say? Surprise, surprise, Javier Milei just happens to be for Argentina. Is a guy that's come out of nowhere as far as I'm concerned. He's an absolute breath of fresh air because he's actually coming out and speaking exactly for what socialism is. Exactly for the cancer that it is on society. It just so happens to be that this type of person is gaining popularity, is gaining traction in a country that has suffered the consequences of what socialism has done to them for decade after decade after decade. They have gone through many years of the type of strong socialist economy, the heavy nationalisation and stuff like that. Now, I'm not talking about Argentina in general, but I'm talking about for years with the socialist policies and everything like that. Again, you would have to understand socialism. It doesn't just start, with communism, and of course these people would reject it because, they're never going to be honest with you. These countries have went through a cycle where it's been somewhat of a mixed economy, where you've still got strong corporatism in that, and then it's went back to strong socialism, and it's went back and forth for more than a century-long period. Most of them have never had the opportunity of capitalism. Of course, they probably thought that mixed economy with strong corporatism was somehow capitalism, and it isn't. That Javier Milei is gaining popularity in Argentina, typically they vote in the socialists every 4 years probably. They just get more and more of the same, despite the fact they keep making the same promises, it's the same results, or and or. In a country that's got high crime, that's heading into extreme poverty, that's suffering the consequences of socialism, that finally these type of folk are looking to the alternative. Now this guy has blown my mind because he's not just somebody of your average. He's gone as far to speak about, getting rid of the central bank.
Javier, thank you for joining us at Bloomberg. We wanted to ask you first on what most raises doubts among investors, which is the dollarization plan. How fast do you think it can be implemented? How is it going to work in practice? And how will you get the Congress approval?
I think there's a previous discussion about dollarization. Actually, strictly speaking, is to get rid of the central bank. One has to do with a moral issue, which is that stealing is wrong. And seigniorage is nothing more or less than a swindle by politicians against good people. Therefore, let's say, if we consider that stealing is wrong, one of the greatest thieves in the history of mankind is the central bank.
What would you do if the Congress says no?
I will plebiscite it.
And move forward?
No, I'll leave it to the will of the people so that the Congress can explain them why it does not want them to choose which currency to have.
And what would you do with the central bank? Would you eliminate it? At one point you made the joke you were going to set it on fire.
Well, I'm talking about the layout, what needs to be done with that building. It's a figure, it's a metaphor. I'm referring to the fact that it no longer exists. Regarding the transition, until we manage to transform the banking system into a free banking system, the function of regulating the banks will have to be fulfilled. The financial entity will continue to operate until a free banking system is in place.
Decentralising the banking system, free market money in banking. I wish this guy was our First Minister of Scotland. This guy just, he's an absolute breath of fresh air. I absolutely love the guy. Even on trade, for that matter, he's speaking about free trade. The guy was asking about the sort of trade with government involvement in that, and he's basically coming out and saying to him, no, that's no true free trade. We're asking for free trade that benefits the people, not some sort of free trade in name only where it causes a diversion. Instead, we're arguing for free trade that actually, directly benefits the people of Argentina.
Let me ask you now about the international affairs. What are going to be the angles there?
Our fundamental angles are free trade, peace, freedom, and aligning ourselves to the West, where our top references are the United States and Israel.
And what about China? It's one of the main trading partners.
It might be a business partner with the private sector. However, we do not make pacts with communists.
So what would you do? In other words, would you stop Argentina's relations with China?
I would not promote relations with communists, whether it's Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, Nicaragua, or China.
In other words, for Venezuela, are you going to change the policy?
Obviously.
And what about Brazil? It's the country's most important trade partner. You've spoken harshly about Lula in the past. Can you have a closer relationship?
No.
What do you mean? You don't think so?
In fact, I believe that Mercosur must be eliminated because it is a defectuous customs union that harms good Argentines. In other words, it's basically a trade managed by states to favor a specific class of businessmen. So that doesn't promote trade. It destroys trade. That generates trade diversion. It isn't good. It generates income for friends of the power class. It's truly horrible.
But in the world, there are a lot of bilateral and commercial treaties. It's good for the private sector.
No, it's good for those who are associated with governments in managing that trade. It's not good for the people. What's good for the people is for trade to be free, and it's not. When the state gets involved, it does harm. In fact, Mercosur works that way in Argentina. It generates a trade diversion. If it generates trade diversion, it generates harm. And who gets the benefits? Politicians who steal and favored businessmen. Then the question is, why do you want there to be a favored businessman and thieves at the expense of good citizens?
If the Argentinian people vote this guy in and he manages to achieve, change in that country within the next couple of years, that country is going to be the fastest growing economy, not just in South America, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And what a revolutionary change that would be just to see that happening. And again, it just happens to be in South America where this sort of thing is taking place. Have a listen to what he says.
al zurdo de mierda no le podés dar ni un milímetro.
Pero ¿me podés definir zurdo de mierda? Que no
Todos
lo
los que,
entiendo.
digamos, los colectivistas, los que ponen, digamos, o sea, esa idea... A ver,
¿Por qué le pones de mierda, digamos?
Porque son una mierda. O sea,
vos mezclás...
no,
pero
es que
eso
si
es
pensás,
pero
si pensás distinto te van a aniquilar. Ese es el punto. Es decir, vos al zurdo no le podés dar un milímetro, porque le das un milímetro y lo tomas para destrozarte. Es decir, o sea, vos no podés negociar con el zurdo. No se negocia. No se negocia con esa mierda, no se negocia porque te van a llevar puesto. Y como estamos siendo tan mejores que ellos, como los estamos aplastando en la batalla cultural, los estamos pasando de arriba, porque no solo le ganamos en lo productivo, somos superiores moralmente, somos superiores estéticamente, somos mejores en todo. Y les duele, les duele. Entonces, como no pueden pelear con las herramientas legítimas, se apalancan en el aparato represivo del Estado, poniendo torres de guita para hacernos mierda. Y aún así no pueden, tuvieron que bajar la nota, ¿me entendés? Que están perdiendo, están desesperados, están perdiendo la batalla cultural, los zurdos de mierda, por primera vez se ven acorralados los zurdos de mierda.
Now, whilst I wouldn't go as far as to say that, you know, every socialist is out to get you and pure evil and all, you know, I don't go to that extreme. There are certain folk who, in my opinion, are led up the garden path, and I can more than understand where he's coming from, how he feels, why he's saying what he's saying. The problem is, with a lot of these people, they're so gullible and all they can think about is the ideology of socialism. You might have a goal for something, you can have all the good intentions in the world, but just because you intend for something to be a certain given way doesn't mean to say that that's how it turns out in practice. Intellectually and morally, socialism is bankrupt. It's an evil ideology, and the type of people he's going on about, they are a real danger. And the reason why they're so much of a real danger, and you've been seeing this in recent years with the political correctness, where these, you know, so-called socialists go around calling you a fascist, a Nazi, this, that and the next thing. In other words, all it takes is for you to say, I support privatisation of such and such, and they'll say, you're a Nazi. They're uneducated, right? They're very, very poorly educated. They don't understand the difference between fascism and capitalism. They don't understand the difference between true private ownership and fake private ownership. They don't even bother to acknowledge the government's involvement in the history about Nazi Germany. They've probably never had the open mind to read things like vampire economy and stuff like that. So instead, all they do is look at things in black and white. They see that Nazi Germany had a private sector to some extent, and then they just say, well, you support privatisation, therefore that means you're a Nazi, or you support privatisation, therefore that must mean you're a fascist. And the reason why these people are so dangerous is because where socialism in the real world leads to is dictatorship.
A ver, digamos, ¿por qué nació el liberalismo? Para salir del yugo opresor de los monarcas. Digamos, esta casta que tenemos son como los monarcas, y ni siquiera se autoheredan. Son los mismos que estaban en el 2001. No se fue ninguno, estos chorros se quedaron todos. Y hay más, porque además se multiplican, porque tenés que agregar la parentela, sí, porque además tenés que agregar la amante, porque tenés que agregar la familia del amante, y crece, y crece, y crece. Y el bolsillo, digamos, de lo que producen, digamos, es cada vez más chico. O sea, entonces no puede ser que en un país sí le vaya mejor a los parásitos de la política que al tipo que produce. Es decir, no te puede ir mejor, ¿sí?, siendo un parásito de la política que no produce nada y que cuando hace algo lo único que hace es daño. Porque una de las cosas que pasa cada vez que interviene el Estado, se genera lo que se llama el fallo del Estado. O sea, fíjate esto, los planes contra la pobreza, ¿qué hacen? Generan más pobres. Mira el caso argentino.
And these brainwashed folk are going around somehow thinking that ULEZ, you know, that whole thing with the 15-minute cities and all the rest of that, and, you know, the smart cities, they think that's capitalism. I'm looking at them and I'm thinking to myself, what planet are you living on? Klaus Schwab has made it abundantly clear how anti-capitalist he is. He's basically come out basically telling you in his own language oh, capitalism isn't working, somehow we need a new system, we need a global reset. That's what he was arguing. So what Javier Milei is basically arguing, he's absolutely spot on. You're seeing the rise of authoritarianism and stuff like that. The attempt to try and control every aspect of your life, controlling directing forces onto, a central bank digital currency and all this through the use of socialism. Still, people here in the West still can't grasp it. They're blaming the rank system. They're blaming capitalism for essentially what basically is the fault of socialism. None of them have got a clue what they're talking about. They don't understand that it's the free market that prevents monopolies, oligopolies and cartelisation from forming. So what do? They end up protecting themselves from the name of the free market, and they continue on supporting the mixed economy because somehow they've been brainwashed to believe that they need to strike the right balance between capitalism and socialism. Unfortunately, many folk sneer and laugh at my kind. They think I'm an extremist. They think I'm the one that's in the wrong. And I've even had the odd comments before in the past where they say, oh, thank fuck you're in the minority, thank fuck you're the majority. It's like, yeah, thank fuck you're the majority. Our economy is heading for the toilet. We faced a crisis, their energy crisis is out of control, inflation is sky high. We're sitting with a fraudulent central banking system and you want to set up another one, and somehow thank fuck you're the majority. None of them have got a clue about economics, and that's why I've long says to you, nationalism and unionism in this country means absolutely nothing. All the argument about remaining in the union or leaving the union for the sake of Scottish independence, that's not going to change anything. A mixed economy is a mixed economy. You're never in a million years going to make a mixed economy work. They don't understand that the Scandinavian countries strangely deregulated their economies, right? And they also don't understand that those Scandinavian countries are suffering the consequences of their higher tax rates. It's just like the same argument when it came down to Brexit. Brexit's got absolutely nothing at all to do with the economic crisis. If that was the case, then how the hell did they explain the 2008 financial crisis when we were part of the European Union? Leaving the European Union wasn't gonna magically make your economy better off. And the reason why it's no is because you're still sitting with a private sector, all regulated by the state. You're still sitting with a tax rate still relatively high. How the hell do you expect an economy to thrive and prosper if you're living in the absence of a free market economy? You're in a mixed economy. And he did come out and basically say that these are the sort of people that want you dead, and that was kind of the point that I was making. I even says this before, and this is why they're so dangerous, these type of people, because even for you saying that you support privatisation, they'll call you a Nazi or they'll call you a fascist. If they ever had it their way and they did push towards strong socialism, right, and let's say they let in a dictator, trust me, those type of socialists that were calling you a fascist and a Nazi, they would justify your death. And what's that saying about something that requires, in an age where truth is regarded as extreme or hateful, it requires somebody revolutionary. I can't even remember what the same is. Somebody comment in the comments section below, because honestly, I've been one of those people that have been speaking out for years now. I lost folk because of it. And you know what? I couldn't care less. Because to me, the truth matters more than anything. And I'll continue on doing it. My videos are gone nowhere. I continue to speak out the truth because people deserve to know the truth. They deserve better in life. And that's just that. Yeah, that's my personal opinion on the matter. And Javier Milei, we need more of him. But unfortunately, Scotland alone is all run by a bunch of quasi-socialists who are obsessed with socialist price controls, socialist this and socialist this, that and the next thing. And it's a bloody joke what they've done to this country. And this was a country that was the world leader of medicine and education. I hope this is a change for the good. I hope more folk understand, get to realise that all this stuff to do with ULEZ and everything that you're seeing, these attempts to try and control every aspect of your life, that is socialism, folk. And it's by time you waking up. It's by time you actually start fighting back against it and get rid of it, because it's evil and you deserve better than this, and that's why you need a free market economy. That's why you need to get rid of socialism, not just for the sake of a better economy and a better life, but of course to have your economic and political freedom. So thank you for watching, folk. I hope you've got, anything you'd like to fire away, suggestions or that, comment in the comment section below. And of course, I shall talk to you later. Cheers.